Hello, leavers and believers. Welcome to Leaving Hillsong this long weekend. I hope you're having a happy holiday wherever you are, or you're getting paid a lot of money if you've got to work over this week. My name's Tanya and I'm super excited that you've joined us today because this is a very special presentation. We have leveled up Leavers Achievement Unlocked. I've got some pastors to talk to us, some who had the Hillsong badge on their shirts for a bunch of years. It's always so interesting going back and editing something after talking with people, because you always go like, oh, I did that here and I should have done that there. But it's just, you get to hear the conversation the second time and it's like, yeah. I know people will like that and people will relate to that. And yeah, I'm glad you said that. And oh, yeah, there's a pastor for you. So I think you'll really enjoy this perspective. I've cut this up into 3 parts because it was a longer conversation, and also because the Easter weekend isn't always busy and full of beautiful times for a lot of people, particularly if you are deconstructing or you have come from some kind of religious background, and Easter is just like a really scary Mel Gibson movie and not this kind of wondrous moment that people are telling you it is. If you need permission not to go to a family event because it's going to cause more trauma than is going to help, I think give yourself permission to do that or not do that, whatever you think is best. So I'm aware there's a lot of gaps for a lot of people during events like this. So hopefully if you didn't want to have to submit to the voices of those pastors, you can listen to the voices of these former pastors, and they really are quite far away now from singing the Hillsong song. I think there's a chunk in here for consumers of Hillsong everywhere. I mean, it really is lived experience stuff, isn't it? Consumers of this service. I think there's a lot for members and congregants, but also for people who've been in leadership roles. I think they'll really identify with a lot of stuff in here. So instead of saying what's going to happen, let's jump right into Out of the Woods. Part 1. So I guess Craig and Sam, can you introduce yourselves for me, please, then? And I guess how you found yourselves at Hillsong.
Okay, my name's Craig and
I'm Sam.
And
We've been married for 30 years.
Yeah, we've got 4 children.
Thank you.
And we were formerly pastors at Hillsong Church back in, we arrived there in 2000.
End of 1999. Yep.
Yeah. And we left 2007.
Yep. Correct. Yeah.
At the time, how I got there is I was in Queensland. I was a youth pastor in Queensland, and I was been there for 5 years. I was formerly at the Penrith Church back in the days it was called the Centre, and I was the youth pastor there. And Gary Clark, who was I was assistant youth pastor, and he was the pastor. Then he moved on, and I became the youth pastor. And after being youth pastor for a while, I then moved up to Queensland with Sam. And then after 5 years, I really felt I needed something different was coming. And pretty much I was in relationship with Gary, me and him were close friends. I was his best man at his wedding. I think he was mine as well. And he was running Hillsong, like a satellite church in St Mary's. And he said, I'm going to go to the UK. Do you want to come down and run this church? And just previously, just to be a bit vulnerable here, I guess what was going on up where we were was Sam just had a bit of a miscarriage.
Yeah.
And we ran into a guy that was a kind of a prophet, had a prophetic gift. And one day he was flying out to America and he rang us up. He said, come to the hotel before I fly out. And I feel like God's got a word. So we went there and he said, you're going to go back to Sydney. Your wife's going to have a baby girl and her name's going to be Stephanie. And this is like literally a couple of days after Sam had got out of hospital having a curette. And
I'm so sorry to hear that, too. That's horrible.
Yeah. And it was interesting because he said the name Stephanie, and I said to Sam, did that mean anything to you? And she said, well, when I was a teenager, I always wanted to call a girl Stephanie. So it was kind of like, wow. And a year from basically when he said that, we had a baby girl whose name is Georgia Stephanie Wood.
Beautiful.
So yeah,
We felt it was timely that we came back to Sydney.
So we came back to Sydney and took on a church in St Mary's, which we kind of love because I've got a big heart for social justice. And St Mary's profile, you had about 19 brothels on the street. It had a methadone clinic, and I just related with people there. I got on. Yeah, we had chaplains going into all the brothels, not to judge, but just to, we'd give out makeup kits and cards and just saying we love you and have a great year kind of thing. And same with the methadone clinic, I built up a good relationship. We had a big food bank and just a lot of things were going on, which was really cool. And
community kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What's your background in terms of growing up in Christian homes, or what kind of homes did you come from?
I did it.
Church. How did you get to church to get to Hillsong?
Sure, you want to go first?
Yeah, so I was about 15. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but I grew up in a really good home, and like we always, believed in God. And yeah, I kind of ended up at this church at Penrith through a friend around 15, and then probably around 17 I kind of was a regular at youth group, regular attending church, getting really involved, and that's where I met Craig.
For me, I was at uni. I was training to be a high school teacher, and I didn't believe in God whatsoever, And one day there was this guy that was a bit of a Bible basher. Everyone knew him as a Bible basher, and everyone had been Bible bashed by him except for me. And I thought, what's wrong with me? So anyhow, I was on the train going home, and he happened to be on that train. He actually lived literally about a kilometre away from where I lived, but I never knew that. And he went to the church at Penrith as well. I said, mate, I want to be Bible bashed. I've never been Bible bashed in my life. Go for it. And he was a guy that was a missionary that used to go into China and sneak Bibles through undercover. And it kind of intrigued me that I thought all Christians were a bunch of nerds, you know what I mean? And I thought, this guy's, getting interrogated by the Chinese police. He's doing this, he's doing that. I thought, wow. And he's telling me stories about God that's, healing people and doing this. And I thought, oh. Anyhow, he just said to me one day, he just said, look, if I can talk you into God, someone can talk you out of it. If you want to know God, just ask him. So I remember going home and in my bedroom and saying, God, if you're real, reveal yourself. And nothing happened, to be honest with you. But over the next 2 weeks, I kept running into all these Christians that I'd never run into, like ministers. And then in a park, on a park bench, I just had this encounter with God. And it was an experience that I can still vividly remember today. And I lost all my friends because that encounter was so real. I wanted to tell everyone about it. Probably went about the wrong way, but you know what I mean?
That's youth. Anyway,
I see the light.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, don't hold back, because we need the The good stories, the happy stories. That's what I said to Sam I loved the other day was, all the good stories. So, yeah. You're at uni. Okay, so then you go to church with this guy?
Yeah, he invites me to go to a church. He took me to this rally with a guy by the name of Barry Smith at Frank Houston's church.
Okay.
Where it was at a university, Randwick University, back in the late 80s. And it was all about the mark of the beast and this and that and 666 and all that kind of stuff. It kind of intrigued me. And I remember, as they did back in those days, come down the front if you want to give your life to Jesus. But who wouldn't at that point? And even though I had this encounter before this thing, but it was just a new experience. Like I'd never been to church before, and you got this band, and when I did that, I actually had another encounter with God, which was a bit crazy, and then I lived in Penrith, and we went to church in Randwick, so I ended up going to his church back in Penrith, which is called the Centre back in those days. So that's where I went. I went to a private school. I had a lot of leadership potential, I guess, everyone, and I had this extreme hunger for God and just wanting to know more about this new mystical thing that I ran into. So I got promoted pretty quick.
Yeah.
Well, they were dramatic days, weren't they? I mean, there wasn't set times for services, and they were full on. Yeah,
well, Penrith wasn't like Hillsong.
Okay.
And it was early days at that time. Like Hillsong was the up and coming shining light. It was very Pentecostally back then. People would speak in tongues and some would interpret it. And it was very spiritual. And when you look back at it and the songs that we used to sing, oh my God.
They were awesome. What? They were great.
That
was. What's wrong with you? Now, is that a direct, was that a CLC or a plan? It was an extension.
It wasn't. It was probably independent at that time. It wasn't till near the end that we became part of the AOG. It was more of an independent, charismatic kind of church.
Okay. And then where do you guys meet up?
Yep. So we meet in what you call a connect group, like a home group. Yep. And then obviously started.
We connected. We connected in the connect group.
Craig did some follow-up. Home follow-up. Yep. And then, so I was 17. Yeah. I was 17 and then, dated for a couple of years, got married at 19. As you do.
I'm sitting here looking at you. You look perfectly happy. I mean, I don't know what happens when the lights go down, but
absolutely.
It's lovely. Yes. And then
it was you just took on the youth group, didn't you?
Yes. I just took on the youth ministry. Pastor. We got married, and the youth group sort of took off more outside of church because my heart was for outside of church. Because I had a high school teaching background, I worked a jail for most of my career as a teacher and as a youth worker. I did a couple of stints in Mount Druitt and different couple of private schools and stuff, but I was always there to support what I wanted to do in ministry. So finally, when I got a full-time job in the church, I could go all guns a-blazing, which I did. Sort of started up a lot of stuff, breakfast clubs and helping disadvantaged youth, getting involved in community groups in the area, and it really took off. Like we had a good sized youth ministry, but the outreach was nearly 1,000 kids a week that were kind of reaching. Okay. So they were fun days. And we're doing radical stuff. We're doing stuff that no one was doing. And because of that, my name started to get out, and I ended up doing a lot of speaking around Australia. I worked with Pat Massetti for a while, Youth Alive, the high school state.
Moment of silence for what was Pat Massetti and Youth Alive.
And then and some other guys. So most of the big wigs, if you like to use that terminology, in the AOG as far as youth and senior pastors, I kind of knew. Not the old school ones, but the new ones, because just through my connections and networking.
So is this before St. Mary's or during the St. Mary's time?
No, this was way before. This is while I was a youth pastor.
Yeah. Okay. So early days. Okay.
So this is before I was a part of Hillsong. I mean, I had Brian come and speak at my youth ministry that he'd never normally do stuff like that. He came. That's how I connected with Brian. That's how he knew me. Not that we were definitely not friends or hung out or anything like that. He just knew of me, I guess, and
through Gary,
through Gary Clark probably.
Okay, so Gary goes to that church in
Mhm.
Penrith when you're a youth pastor.
Yeah, so we got to Queensland.
I went to Queensland. Gary was still at Penrith.
Then he moved to
and then he
Hillsong.
went over to Hills. He left there and went to Hillsong Church, and he took over St Mary's. And we're in an old Centrelink building in the main street of St Mary's with about 100 odd people when Gary left it and when I took over. Yeah.
And I'm not just being pedantic. Like, there's a lot of people that remember all those different times and places and stuff. So, wow, I remember the good old days, Hira Hall and stuff. Yes. Okay, please continue.
So basically, we came to Sydney, took over the St Mary's.
So you were employed. Like, I was never.
Sam wasn't
paid
employed.
Not
did get paid.
Yeah, we did. I did. Probably a couple of years before we left, but in the early days, we had 3 young boys. I was pregnant with my 4th, so it was pretty full on. But so I was just, still volunteering, doing kids ministry and play groups and all that kind of stuff. But
as St Mary's Church grew, it got bigger. Then we had to move out of that building, and we moved into another building, and then
decorated it with the
whole
Hillsong blue and all that kind of stuff.
And then
so just very quickly though, like Sam and I talked before about those completely unpaid expected hours of the pastors' wives. When you were, saying before, like, oh yeah, I did do the creation, I did do all these like those are real things. I mean, they're billable hours that just go.
I mean, it gets better in the sense that more hours, because I ended up, when I left, I was running.
You took over Mitch and Bree?
I was running 4 churches for them. I was running Hillsong St Mary's. I pioneered another one at Penrith that sort of grew fairly quickly. We ran out of the RSL club, which was Saturday night. I was asked to take on Mitchenberry, which was a church of about 250 people in Mitchenberry. And then from there, I realised there was a lot of specific islands in Mount Druitt, so I started a Friday night service as well. I was running a service Friday night, Saturday night. St Mary's had
2 services.
2 services, and Mitchenberry had one. So I was
back and forth.
I was going back and forth.
3 in the morning, then
3 in the morning, and then I'll do
Hills.
2, and if there was a ministry service on,
Crazy.
3 at night. So sometimes I'd be doing 8 services a week.
Crazy, absolutely crazy.
And what else does that mean when you're running a church? Like, what other kind of, when you say I took on or I pioneered, like what else is, like, is it the 3 o'clock in the morning phone call kind of stuff is what I'm always wondering as well. But
No. I look, to be honest with you, I wasn't really a pastor. I had the title, but I wasn't a pastor, and people knew it. And I communicated that to people. I go, look,
okay,
you want me to come and visit your hospital? I'm the last one you want there.
When you say you weren't a pastor, you're a credentialed pastor at the time.
Yeah, I was a credentialed pastor. But the ministry gift, I was not pastoral. I cared for people, but I did it not in a get beside you and like that. I loved people, and I always took if someone asked me, can we have a coffee, I'd make the time, no problem. And if someone asked me to come and do it, I'd do a funeral, I'd do it, or a wedding, I had no problems, which I did. I did heaps of funerals and weddings.
Okay, so when you're offering brothels, like saying, reaching out and going, we love you, like what are you offering them then?
Sorry?
Organization. When you had been doing that kind of street work, like what does that actually mean? So if the there's people in brothels right now listening and they remember a package from some church that says, hey, we love you, then what does that mean if it's not?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Well, this is where my journey started to change. The reason why I couldn't really stay at Hillsong is so much. We did so much to try and get people to come, and I kind of didn't agree with that. I just wanted the people to know that God loves them, and if you don't want to come, more power to you. That's not what it's about. It's just that, you know. So in the brothels, for instance, is, hey, you know, because a lot of people's perspective of Christianity is they're just doing this to get me in. Where I'm going, well, no, I just want you to know that there's a God that actually truly does love you, and He wants you to know that. So so yeah, that's kind of where it was at for me. So and anyhow, so as we got a bit bigger, Sam.
Yeah, so I did go on
I
staff
got
for a couple
Sam
of
to
days
come on a couple of days
just to do
pastoral care.
Yeah.
To make up for what because I was kind of, you know, doing a lot of leadership stuff. So my role was to give the vision. I had a core team. I had pastors now running each of those churches or ministers. So I would basically be speaking a lot and kind of organizing the team.
Throw us on the map for the year here, please. Where are we talking? Mid-90s somewhere? Or
Yeah.
Oh, no. That would have been early 2000s.
So early 2000s, sorry.
Yeah.
okay.
Started Hillsong on
yeah.
the year 2000.
Yeah. So
after about 7 years, St Mary's grew to over 300 odd people. Mitchellberry grew it. So I was kind of looking after around about 800 or 900 people in that area. And I wasn't burnt out. We just did it. Like, we did it. It did get a bit tough. Yeah, it was more about the expectation.
Well, I mean, I'm blown away how people have 4 children anyway. Like, that's a lot of people. No, well, and pay the bills and deal with grandparents and all other kinds of things. So how?
Look, we because, you know, at the time it was Craig employed, okay, and it wasn't a great wage, like, honestly. And I know there's been people talk about, you know, pastors' wages and the fringe benefits side of it and things like that, which absolutely, I think at the time half of his wage was fringe benefits, so he didn't pay tax on half of it. But I think I mentioned to you the flip side of that, no super was paid on that, which a lot of people didn't realise either. So, you know, a lot of pastors, and I think we have seen this, a lot of older pastors didn't get paid super, so their expectations are they want kickbacks from these churches for the rest of their lives because they've pioneered and sown into these churches, and now that church has to pay me forever, pretty much.
I did not know that. Okay, and I had not even considered that.
Well, I've only heard of one person.
I've heard of a few, but anyway.
Anyway, actually 2 people.
Okay.
I wonder what do the Americans call it, like your retirement fund for when you retire. The company pays into it while you're employed, and
So sorry, just back to the original question. So we didn't, you know, we weren't on a great wage, so it wasn't like we could afford to get, you know, help with the kids or anything like that, and not that I wanted to anyway. So we just had to make it work. We just did it. Yeah.
It did get tough.
You know,
if I could go back, I wouldn't do it.
Absolutely not.
You know,
absolutely.
it was taxing on my children.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I wasn't forced. They didn't make me do it. I chose to do it. Like, I'm my own person. So no one said, you have to run Mitchellberry Church. I put my hand up for it. No one said, you know, you got to pioneer something at Penrith. I put my hand up for it. They let me do it, but I wanted to do it. And it was because of who I am. I get bored easy, so I need to, and the more Hillsong became a bit of a cookie cutter kind of program for what was called the outreach services at that stage, and we're falling into, I couldn't do a lot of the stuff that I used to do in the community. They just wanted me to bring people to make their Sunday night crowd big. So I was getting bored. So I thought, what else can I do? Because I can't just, I'm not a manager. So I took on all these different services and pioneered them.
But can I just bring it back to just on the kids? Because I think I think we spoke about this, Tanya. So there was an expectation that even though I wasn't paid, I was supposed to be seen in services.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, having our daughter, she was 4 weeks old, in the mother's room when, you know.
Well, there's a situation. I remember one night we had a new people's thing on during the week for all new people to come to, and there wasn't a big crowd there, and Brian you could see he was really frustrated. So then after it, he was hammering all the pastors about it. And I'm sitting there going, well, you know, I did what I was asked to do. And then I was there, and he just looked up at me and said, and your wife's not even sitting next to you in the services. And I'm not the one just to sit there and shut up, right? So as he walked out, I said to him, oh, mate, it's because, you know, I've got 4 kids and 3 of them are still in nappies. And he said to me, well, you better fix it or you can look for another job. Of which I said to him, I'll have it sorted, you know, because it was a reflex action, you know. But I wasn't happy when he said that to me. It was like...
Had he said that from stage? And you
Sorry?
watched it?
No.
Okay.
No. He said, not from the stage, but there was just a bunch of pastors around him.
Okay.
He just looked at me and said that. And then as he was walking out, I followed him and
tried to explain why.
And you know, as a phrase that he doesn't certainly live by is, you know, there's no excuse like a good excuse. And so I just thought, wow,
brutal man.
Like when Craig said, you know, I'll sort it, I'll make it happen. So I remember the next week we got a friend and she looked after our baby. It was only about 5 weeks. And I did that for a week, and I just said to Craig, no way. You know, I didn't have kids for other people just to put them in programs and stuff like that. I'm not doing this, you know. I call it a conviction, call it whatever you want, but that's how I felt. So I just continued on, and I don't know, we must have just flown under the radar and nothing else got said. But I did see, you know, because that comes up quite a few I've heard in other people's stories of, you know, the pastor's kids are, some Bible college students dropping them off and another one's picking them up. And so I do really understand that, because that was just an expectation that you're seeing always in services, which is really sad. It's, you know, when that's, you know, you don't have kids just to palm them off, you know.
And yet the pressure is there, So I know there's a lot of parents that, you know, looking back with regrets, and there's kids going, where were you? So I don't know, but what can you kind of say to that? Like, to, you know, how do people deal with it? How did you process any of that stuff, I guess? Like,
when we officially left, and we'll kind of, you know, just, you know, Craig resigned, which I'm sure he'll share that story, but I just felt so much guilt of what I put my kids in. And look, they didn't, you know, they actually loved, and I actually rang a couple of my kids today going, oh, you know, every now and then we'll talk about it, you know, what was your take on it, kind of thing. And they loved the St. Mary's Church. They loved that because there was a lot of their cousins in that service, and it was just beautiful. You know, the people were beautiful. You know, we were connected in a community. They loved it. But honestly, to get them to the bigger church, and there's nothing wrong with the bigger church, it's just that that wasn't their home church, if that makes sense. It wasn't their community, their people. So to go there was like literally bribing them. Okay, we're going to have Maccas on the way home, or we're going to do this and that. You know what I mean? Thinking, oh yeah, we're doing the right thing. And when you leave that, you go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? What, you know, bringing these kids, not only are they in school 5 days a week, but now they're going to flipping programs on their weekends. This is supposed to be their time as well. You know, at Hillsong conferences, I remember getting them in the car at 7 a.m, packing their breakfast to, you know, drive down, spend the day in a week in, you know, I was serving in kids ministry, packed them all back in the car, and, you know, and that was their school holidays. Like, it was just always jam-packed with church's agenda, I suppose. And look, that we did give them opportunities to do a bit of sport and things, but probably not as many opportunities as they would have liked. So yes, there's a lot of guilt when we left, a lot of guilt. So, and we kind of, when we did leave, I remember them doing little athletics on the weekends and allowing them to just do more and just, gosh, just,
I mean,
hope we
and
haven't
how do you kind of resolve that? I mean, because it's been some time, it's been some time. You've had some time to process it. What do we say to the people who sort of walked away 6 months ago and they're going, oh man,
with the parent side, I just, number one, just like obviously cut yourself some slack, be kind to yourself, and I think it's just working out what makes you happy and what makes your kids happy. Like, at the end of the day, that's, listening to your instincts and what you want for your family, not so much of what somebody else wants. Just, being confident in you, making the decisions for your family.
And I would say,
it sounds easy, doesn't it? Yeah.
I know, but
you've had someone else dictate to you for all those years.
Everything was organised. Every day of the week was pretty much structured and organised, which we all did willingly. Don't get me wrong. Like, nobody, and we felt at the time it was the right thing to do, and we even enjoyed a lot of it. So
and I just think parenting's a hard gig at the best of times anyhow. Like, if I was in the corporate world, I would be putting the same amount of energy in trying to, I just know me,
build your career,
build my career. But I guess the only difference is the corporate world's a bit different in the sense that there'd be no expectation on my wife or my children.
There's company picnics and various dinners.
But that expectation is once or twice a year, rightio? It's a bit different to every week turning up and being, and being on the front row and coming to this and being supportive here. So it is there's a lot more energy. I mean, I've worked in corporate. I know the both sides, but it's.
My dad was a banker, and if I'm guessing 80 hours a week was a minimum, and nobody batted an eyelid, and it's that same. So
he didn't get paid for his 80 hours. I mean, now no one would. People speak up, and there's fair work, and there's all these different things that didn't really exist in the 80s. And I guess that was leaned on by the church. I think they leaned on that, saying it's a privilege for you to do this, and if it's. Brian used to say it's a privilege for you to be a pastor at Hillsong, right? And if you didn't want to be, there's people in line waiting to be. So, and he said when he got a bit angry, he did say stuff like that. So it was a real job security move by him. So it was definitely interesting times. But what happened to me, I guess, in the latter years is I started going on a journey where I just got bored with all the same leadership lingo and the same leadership books. Everyone was reading the John Maxwell and this and that, and all the pastors read the same literature, you know what I mean? That kind of endorsed that kind of Christianity. And I don't know, I just... The question that, and Sam knows this, and I had this lingering question running through me all the time. Jesus came to give life and life more abundantly. And I would say, if this is it, if this is it, I'm pretty disappointed in that life. And it seemed like that life was it was like if it is it, then it's like a carrot, just in front of me that I can never get to. And I thought, I just don't believe that's the case. So I've got to do seeking outside of this framework of Christianity. And that's what probably about 2 years maybe before I left Hillsong, I started looking into, listening to, going back to my roots, I guess, listening to rabbis and listening to people that had different spins on scripture. So, which kind of then started opening my eyes up, going, wow, okay. And then I started seeing, I believe personally, my view of God was very small, even as a pastor. And all of a sudden, my eyes began to open a lot wider, and I saw God's grace to be truly amazing, not the grace that we used to sell where, we used to say it's unmerited favor, but you got to do this, this, and this, right? So it was never unmerited favor. You know what I mean? There was strings attached, and God's love is this. But if you don't, the gift of salvation is for free, but you got to put up your hand, walk out in front, do this, and it's actually not for free. And so there was this very much. I had those questions. I'm going. And I realized that a lot of the Christianity that I understood back then was based on fear. It wasn't based on love. So that started welling up within me. Do you know what I mean? I started thinking, that's why I was thinking, if this is it, this is not how I understand the God that I love to be, and the God that I know loves me to be. So that got stronger and stronger and stronger. And I talked to Sam about it, and I was just frustrated. But the issue is, on the other side of that, so much of my significance is attached to the crowd, to the on stage, to the title. And this is what I'm battling with, my own ego the whole time, right?
That's fascinating. That's so honest of you. Okay. Because, I mean, it's a thing. You walk out and this is what I wonder about. But like, it's not just the money or whatever. You walk into a room, everybody's so happy to see you.
Maybe for some, not for us.
No,
okay.
But the kudos, you come in and everyone goes, "How you going, Pastor Craig? Pastor Craig?"
Yeah.
Clapping and laughing at your jokes, and people wanting to sign up. You know what I mean? And so to me, what was welling up is I don't see this Christianity. And in my journey meeting a lot of different leaders, I'd walk away and I go, I don't want to be like them.
Like what is that?
They would open up to me as a leader, and I'd go, dude, that's wow. And I'd go, I don't want to be like that. But you know what? I was becoming like that. At some point, you've got to look in the mirror and go, actually, I am that. And I'm encouraging that and promoting that. So at some point.
What's that? You don't want to be like, what? What do you encourage? Like,
oh, well, for me, it was like, it's a list of things I gather. But for me, it was like some of the Christian leaders' attitude about money really got under my nose. If you go speak somewhere, don't waste your time. They don't pay that much. These were comments that people made. And I'm thinking, wow. And, and I was speaking and getting paid. I'd go out and speak somewhere into a youth meeting, a camp or something, or speak at a church, and they'd give me an honorarium, or they'd take up. And every time they did, I'd feel really uneasy about it. But at the same time, we had practical needs financially. I'm thinking, well, this is good. So you kind of justify it. When I left Hillsong 5 years later, I took on another church, and I would refuse to take any honorariums or anything. I thought, I'm not doing that. But that's another story. Yeah. So, and just attitudes about
a lot of burnouts too.
People are tools. People are, they're tools to they're here to. It's kind of like they're here to serve you, to get your vision done. And my attitude was, no, shouldn't it be the opposite? It's not really about my vision. It's about what do you want to do in life, and how can I help you? Do you know what I mean? Rather than serve, be a servant to my agenda. I should help you realize yours. So I'm having all these, my whole understanding of theological things, heaven, hell, and giving and tithing. That's all changing within me, because I sort of go a bit deeper into it. And I go, I just don't agree with this, but yet I'm supposed to promote it, right? So at some point, I just needed, what I needed was courage to make a decision. And like, I've been in this gig at this point for 20 years.
Yeah.
For 20,
yeah.
No, for about 18
Right.
years of being a pastor or something. So, you
And
get confident in that, but you lose confidence in what's next. Do you know what I mean? And also, if I do have these thoughts, what do they look like? Because you got to have purpose. There's a mission, So you're still wrestling. You don't have to have those, by the way, but I'm just saying you're wrestling with a mindset that's been embedded within me for the last 18 years.
18 years. 18 years. Okay. That was part one. I hope you're enjoying it. I think it's got so much in it, this conversation between these two. I won't talk for much longer. I'll just say, please, look after yourselves. Be kind to yourselves during this period where, self-harm and sacrifice is all kind of celebrated and we take days off for it. And it's all really weird. So please be kind to yourself. And be kind to people around you where you can, and then, if you need to be kind to yourself and get out of there, do that. Keep Leaving Hillsong. Part 2 out tomorrow. We'll talk then. Bye.